Billy, you've had a little bit of time to consume the UEFA independent review. What is your reaction to it this morning?
Thanks, Pete. Yeah, we've had a chance to review it, obviously, late last night and then this morning. I would say a couple different emotions and feelings, really. One is sort of just thinking back now on the event is one of sadness that event itself took place, or those events took place, and the impact that had on our supporters, and what should have been a celebration was obviously not the event that we all expected it to be. So I guess firstly, sadness. But also really a sense of pride. I mean, if you read the report, I think correctly found that there was no blame for our supporters, and I guess with that maybe a sense of relief, and frankly the lies that were started, and not even before the game had started, about the fan behavior, and that this was something that supporters caused. And that's obviously been proven not to be the case. So just a sense of pride in terms of our supporters and the behavior of our supporters. I think if you read the report, it's mentioned a number of times in terms of being called a near miss. And frankly, I think if it wasn't Liverpool supporters, people might have reacted differently. I think the history that we have as a club and going back to Hillsborough really made people behave, and I think the sense of our supporters policing themselves in the face of what was incredibly heavy-handed policing. I was in those crowds, and I saw the behavior of our supporters, and that's the reason why it was a near miss and why it wasn't an actual disaster. So lots of emotion. I would just like to say thank you to the panel, because we worked with them over the course of several months, and I know there's a tremendous amount of work that went into it, and obviously we're incredibly happy with the report as it's come out and the 21 recommendations. And I guess finally, really from our perspective, this is sort of the end of the beginning of this process. This is not the end of the process. I think it's really important that the two things that we asked for was, number one, an independent report so that we could understand what exactly happened, and number two, to ensure that this never happens again. And that's the part that we need to move to now, is to make sure that this never happens again.
You were pretty clear from the outset about what you wanted to see. So having read the report and seen what's in there in terms of the recommendation, how does it compare to what you were asking for from the first place?
Well, I think ultimately the contents of the report are what I thought would be the case, but I think we said at the very beginning, not just before kickoff, but frankly that there needed to be an independent report, a look at what exactly had happened, to understand what happened, to understand why it happened, and again to ensure that it never happened again. And one of the things that we were really upset about, frankly, was this rush to judgment, and whether that was messages that were being put up in the bowl before kickoff, even whether that was French politicians and the comments that were made immediately in the aftermath of the event, blaming fans for what happened, which obviously is not the case. So if you go all the way back, when we landed that next morning from Paris, I spoke about the fact that we needed to see what had actually happened, and so that was the importance of having the independent report. And the work that the panel has done, I think, a lot of time and effort that's been put into it, and clearly, as you can see throughout the report, our fans have obviously been shown not to be at blame, and really it was systemic failures around the organization of the event that led to the issues, both in the build-up to the match, but also a lot of people forget about the issues that happened after the match, and all of our supporters, both Liverpool and Real Madrid supporters, who had issues getting out of the Stade de France as well.
Worth reminding everyone about the previous independent reports last year into those events in Paris as well. What can you tell us about them, Billy?
Well, I think there was a couple of different independent reports that, again, in kind of the months after the event itself that took place, and I know that the panel used some of those reports as well. So the Office of the Prime Minister which put out a report shortly after actually the event itself and blamed again the operational failures, lack of signage, issues that they came to. The French Senate, which we had several of our supporters who actually went down and testified in that report. And again, they came out, we talked about this actually back in the summer, 15 different recommendations that they put forward. And then more recently, actually, Professor Phil Scraton, who also put forward a report. And I'd like to thank, frankly, all three of them, because I know that those were used by the panel in coming to the conclusions that they came to.
And in terms of a timeline now, what happens next? What are the next steps from a football club's point of view now? Yeah,
so as I said earlier, Pete, I think from our perspective, this has obviously been a good length of time. We're 8 months since the final in Paris, and this is, as I've said, sort of the end of the beginning. This is really where the hard work really needs to start now. Again, the sense of pride that we have from the behavior of our supporters, the fact that it wasn't a disaster, which is really down to the behavior of our supporters around the match itself. But now we need to look at how we make sure that nothing like this happens again. And I think it's important also to recognize that as a final, this was always going to be a focal point. Two great clubs coming together in a great city to play in the most important club football match. And it obviously was, as we've said, a near miss in terms of a disaster. And that's okay to focus on the final, but it shouldn't just be about finals. This is about all matches that take place, and the behavior of police, the operational delivery of these events needs to be looked at in a case-by-case basis and ensure that safety and fan safety, supporter safety, is at the heart of all of the operational planning that goes on. It can't just be a focus on finals. It has to be a focus on all of the matches that we conduct across Europe, and that's really UEFA's role and responsibility to deliver on that. So, effectively from our perspective, we want to now see UEFA take these 21 recommendations and put them into practice.
You had an incredible response from fans, didn't you? Over 9,000 got in touch and told you about their experience of what happened there.
Yeah.
And it's important now to give them a message from the club, isn't it, as to what you expect and like you say, what happens next for them.
Absolutely. Well, I think going back to our ask immediately after the final, we asked all of those who were at the match to submit their experience and effectively their testimony, and we said at the time, and I'll say it again, couldn't be more proud of the reaction. Over 9,000 submissions that we had. And I can say, in speaking to the panel during the process over the course of the last several months, those submissions were incredibly impactful. They had the opportunity to look at them, listen to them, read them. They had the opportunity to meet with supporters when they came to Liverpool several months ago. And we were told by the panel how impactful that was. So, again, just a huge thank you to our supporters. I know how difficult a lot of those. I read a lot of them and watched a lot of them. I know how emotional and how difficult it was to put that memory back down, either in video or in writing. So a huge thank you to our supporters. And again, to emphasize the fact that if people are still struggling, that they need to continue to discuss it, continue to talk to friends and family, and the services that we put up on the website as well. But just a huge thank you to our supporters, and couldn't be more proud of them as a whole.